Hello and welcome to another edition of Radio YesCymru with me, Sean Jobbins. And Radio YesCymru is on your favourite apps, podcast apps, and also on the YesCymru YouTube. The guest today is Luke Johns, or a lot of you will know him as Cymru Luke, who's doing loads of fantastic stuff on TikTok, Insta, now got over to the old man's Twitter, where I found him a couple of weeks ago. So Luke Johns, welcome to Radio YesCymru.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you, and I know you're a Fochryw boy, so Fochryw by Merthyr there, but now living down in Cwmbran with the Men of Gwent. And you've been doing some fantastic content on TikTok, Instagram, now on Twitter. Maybe just like to say a few words about yourself and the kind of content you put up there, Luke.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Luke. We've covered that bit off. I make predominantly Welsh independence videos, short form videos, so around a minute, 2 minutes, mainly on TikTok. I've started sharing them recently on X, formerly known as Twitter, because there's a lot of people there, and it seemed a missed opportunity if I was recording it to not share it elsewhere. But yeah, I make, most days I will make a video if I've got the time or if I can, whether that's on water or energy or what's going on politically or history. Yeah, and I've been doing that for 3 years now, roughly.
Yeah, and about how many followers do you have on TikTok, Luke?
So just shy of 44,000 on That's TikTok, which I think is all right. Yeah, when you consider the size of Wales.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a audience, which is smaller than the UK or the US or whatever. But that's meeting a lot of important people, important demographics. I mean, I heard of you because I've deliberately not gone on TikTok, so I don't watch the same things as my kids. I think they want some kind of space from the old man. And so I found you through Twitter, which is, I think, where the old people go to die, basically. But there's a lot of good stuff there still, so whatever's happening with Twitter. So, look, I'm impressed with your content. It's snappy, it's factual, it's presented well. It's done in a sort of quite democratic kind of way. It's not preaching down to people. It's not patronizing people either. It treats people as adults, but in a fun way. And it's just so important. I mean, we spoke to you before we recorded. I mean, you're from Fochryw. We can say a bit about your background and how you got into supporting YesCymru and the independence campaign, because that isn't your background, is it? It's interesting.
No, it's not. Well, as you know, I grew up in Fochryw. I'm sort of standard story, left school after my GCSEs. I've always been a little bit political. I've always been interested in politics.
A very working class background as well.
Yes, yeah. So my father was an HGV driver. He was ex-military. He passed away when I was 11, and then it was a single parent house with my mum. She was a cleaner in Asda for many years, and then a school secretary. So that's what I've come from originally. And when I left school, I immediately wanted to go and work in a factory with my mates because that's what we all did. And the job centre sent me off to Woolworths instead on one of those £50 a week YTS schemes. Yeah, and then I worked in call centres, bounced around a little bit, and then when my son was born back in 2008, I was like, right, I need to think about what I'm doing now. So I went and did some qualifications in customer service and project management, which is what's led me. That's why I'm in Cwmbran. I worked in Cwmbran for a decade in a contact centre there. Did a lot of work with software. And yeah, like I say, I've always just been really into politics. And around the time of the pandemic, I found myself spending more and more time on Twitter. I think that's probably a common theme for most of us.
Yes.
And there was one of those evenings, when you're just annoyed with everyone. I was annoyed with the
that's sometimes
annoyed with Labour, and I was just, what are we even doing? And I stumbled across a video shared by a guy called Owen Williams, with Michael Sheen giving a speech in Merthyr. We was talking about Welsh independence, and it was almost a light bulb moment for me. Until that point, I'd never really considered independence. My parents were Labour voters, and like I say, my dad was ex-military, so very strong sense of Britishness in my household. But I saw the video and what what Michael was talking about, the high streets and chicken shops and all of those. It really, as a Valley boy, it really resonated with me because I lived near Merthyr, you know, in the late 80s, early 90s. I watched everything close down. I watched the high streets disappear. I watched the youth centres that I went to as a kid close before my boy was old enough to go there. And it just really resonated with me and I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I watched the entire speech the next day, the hour and whatever it is, of Michael Sheen talking about it. And then the more I read, the more I was like, I didn't know any of these things. You know, I didn't know how much water we export. I didn't know about our energy. I didn't know about the Crown Estates. And then I had that growing sense of frustration that whenever I talk to people across the independence movement, it's like, oh, if people could just see this, then there's no reason not to support independence. Because
and this is it. I mean, the arguments are all there, but you know, people don't consume the media from a Welsh point of view. They don't get the books.
Exactly.
People always say I didn't learn this in school, but I think, you know, there's only so much schools can do. But I mean, and they've got to be impartial, obviously. But there's so much missed opportunity. So people are totally ignorant of their own country.
Yeah.
And that is deliberately so as well. So having your kind of content, I mean, the kind of things, you know, is there anything which, you know, with the videos you made, you know, you were telling me earlier that the video which had over 250,000 views on TikTok was one about the flag.
Yeah.
And the flag is interesting. I've written a book about the Welsh flag. I mean, it is interesting because Welsh people are very proud of the flag. This is one thing everyone agrees on. It's a fantastic, it's a stonking flag. But I saw that and I was telling you that it's quite an in-your-face video, isn't it? I mean, because it says, you know, we're not on Union Jack. Why aren't we there? And some people are always a bit afraid of that kind of thing. And there's always a debate within the independence movement and within YesCymru that you don't want to be coming over as you need to be confident and you have to challenge people. There's no point in ending up doing nothing. But we tend to also not try to do something which people couldn't get offence with. Your video about the flag is not an offence to anyone, but it is also challenging. And it's interesting that it got 250,000 viewers and also reaction. I don't know what, maybe that was the idea, Luke.
Well, that one was, like I say, it was my second video that I posted about the change to make sure that if you're flying the Union flag on the same pole, the Welsh flag has to go underneath it. And it boggled my mind that came into law in March 2021 when there were so many other things to be worrying about. And I think that really resonated with a lot of people. I find that you're never going to please everyone when you post these videos, and you almost, I don't want to say you don't want to please everyone, but as long as you know you're never going to, you're going to get comments from people who don't like what you're saying. You're going to get comments from people who strongly disagree. But that's part of how social media works. And you know, whether it's Twitter or X or TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, those platforms, the way that they work is they look at your content and go, well, how many likes have you got? How many comments have you got? How many shares? And they work out this sort of an algorithm that runs in the background to say, this is engaging, so I will put it in front of more people. So with things such as that are a little bit challenging, it spreads it. And I think the key thing that I've always wanted to do with my content is create that conversation. I don't think there's anyone out there who will agree with every single thing I have to say. And if they did, I'd probably be worried. If we can get the conversation out there, if we can get people discussing Welsh independence, that's half the battle. And, you know, if you look at the stats for it, you know, support for Welsh independence sort of tripled over the last 15 years or so. And that's because people are starting to have that conversation. They're not seeing Welsh independence as a fringe movement, if you like. It's becoming a mainstream idea. So you've got to say challenging things. You've got to say things that strong unionists are going to disagree with, because that's the way that you bring people into the conversation. And
you also move the Overton window, don't you? So I mean, you're moving the center of the discussion towards independence. And as I say, we don't even have to appeal to, we don't even have to get 80% of the people to support us. You know, we're talking about over 50%. I'd say it's a cushion over there, 55%, 60%. That's it. There are people who will never agree with independence, even if Wales was sitting on an oil field and could be next Kuwait. People still vote against independence. Or that happened in Scotland literally 10 years ago. You know. So I mean, you said obviously there's so much content, there's so much stuff, because Wales has been screwed by the Westminster system,
Oh, yeah.
and also, even more importantly, by Welsh politicians, very often Labour ones, who vote to make sure Wales doesn't have the power. So the same people telling Wales is too poor to be independent are literally the same people who say Wales can't control the Crown Estate and so its own natural resources.
Completely.
Wales can't control its own rail budget. So, literally where we could be pumping money into developing Welsh infrastructure. So these are literally the same people. Tell us we're too poor, but make sure we don't have the means to become rich. They're literally kicking the ladder from beneath our feet, aren't they? And
Yeah.
which is a problem to do with Britishness and with Westminsterism.
Oh, completely. You look at like our Welsh Secretary, Joe Stevens, who for years has campaigned that Wales should get Barnett consequentials for HS2 and that we're being left behind. And, she called out the Tories for the billions of pounds that were owed for HS2. And she wrote in her blog that she would fight for Wales to make sure that we got it for HS2. And then now Labour in power, she said that HS2 doesn't exist. Well, it does. I've been down to Paddington. You can see where they built it. And the hypocrisy of it is
Welsh Labour MPs voted with the Tories not to make HS2 a devolved issue. They made it an England and Wales budget. So they literally voted for this. So they're turning around to say there's nasty Tories with some Tory jingles, and they literally voted for it. And then, as you say, they turned down opportunity from a Tory to devolve policing and justice, where we could have our own justice system, as we had over 1,000 years ago with Hywel Dda, the King of Wales. And we're today celebrating Glyndŵr Day. We used to write our own laws. We had treaties with foreign countries. With the Pope. We've done this before, people. This isn't new to Wales. We have written our own treaties. We have written our own laws. This isn't some kind of people coming out of the cave. And the world, the sky will fall on top of us if we do something different. I mean, some of the facts which you've come in maybe late to the independence movement in terms of your life and from a background which wasn't in any way independence supporting. What are the main points has stuck out to you as an argument for independence? And you've found they worked very well on TikTok, on Insta, on Twitter. People have actually they maybe as surprised as you or as indignant as you are.
Yeah, I think so. Energy and water are always two of the big ones. The amount of electricity we export still blows my mind. If Wales was treated as an independent country on the ranking, we would be the 5th largest electricity exporter in the world. And I know that's privately owned; it's not nationalised, but that companies pay tax on that, and that just goes straight to Westminster. And that blows my mind. The amount of water that we export. There's varying estimates of it, but one of the estimates that stuck out to me was £4.5 billion worth of water being exported, and we get nothing from that.
And with the water, just quickly, it's not even just water to drink, because nobody wants people to suffer in any case. No. There's water for stuff like the technology of the future, which is hydrogen. And if Gito Owen is listening, I will get you on the Radio YesCymru podcast, Gito. I will hunt you down. You can run, but you can't hide. But this is a conversation we need to have. So water there's always a joke with water. And in the early days of YesCymru, we used to avoid talking much about water because there's always a trouble. Oh, yeah, you can talk about water. But it's not even just for the water and drinking and industry now. It is for stuff like hydrogen.
Yeah.
And there's almost, I found this as a tweet the other week. People saying, but you want to make money from something that falls from the sky for free. It's almost as if we're cheating. But nobody tells the Spaniards who are growing peppers and oranges and grapes in southern Spain where the sun shines that they're cheating from making use of natural assets. But in Wales, if we have to make use of water, people say we're sort of being nasty or we're cheating or we're being sort of xenophobic or something. Just to finish, Leigh Party member made some sarcastic comment about, I think, applied policy to have some kind of Ynni Cymru for Welsh energy and talking about the wind farms which have been built across the west now, and and this is Welsh wind, and wind isn't Welsh, but there's no irony, or they see no irony in having British energy or great British energy, because everything is great, of course. So great British energy is fine. Welsh energy is bad. So it's almost that the unionists seem to think we're cheating when we're using natural resources, which we have, which every country does. And London benefits from being close to the continent. That's literally why London has been a big city since the time of the Romans, and probably before then as well, in terms of the Celtic influence. I mean, people make their best of the resources they have, and there's no reason why Wales couldn't do that, and we would do more effectively.
Completely. I mean, the landscape of Wales, the geography of it, the way that there's more wind farms so many more in Wales than in England, if you look at it based on the population size and the area, and that's because of our beautiful landscape. We have these mountains. So, every country makes use of their natural resources. If it's Norway or, Saudi Arabia or anyone who's got these natural resources, that's what you do with it. And Wales is fortunate to have, the landscape that we've got. We're in a really, really unique position. And I think, I often get the comments about water, it falls from the sky. It's like, yeah, but it does fall from the sky, but also you've got to collect it and you've got to treat it and you've got to do all those things with it. And, I like being able to turn on a tap and having fresh drinking water comes out of it. I don't just collect it in a bucket in the garden.
But I mean, I say the sun shines on Spain and Italy. We don't accuse the Italians of cheating by making very fine wine, or the Greeks are cheating because they're exporting olives. But for some reason, if Wales makes money from rain, we're somehow cheating or being xenophobic or something. And we have the added bonus is that we have a comparatively small population. So there's just a lot more cash to be circulated around Wales because of smaller population from any energy we use. So that's and obviously as you know, look, I mean, having our own, controlling our own energy, which should be state run, means people who are having these big wind farms built on their land are going to get more benefit from it, and I feel there's a state there which is sort of, and it's always going to be a contentious issue, but it's not there just to make loads of money, which is filtering through to London, which is what's happening now.
That's the thing. That's the main reason the Crown Estates make me so angry, because it's, wind farms are, not everyone loves them.
No.
There are a lot of people who are opposed to it, but I think the biggest opposition that I have is that money should go back into these communities. If we are going to put a wind farm, I don't know, there's one that they're looking at between Rumney and Merthyr. Well, why wouldn't that benefit the people who live in Rumney and Merthyr? Because
I mean, by refusing to devolve or give us the Crown Estate as it should, as it's gone to Scotland, Labour is literally asset stripping Wales.
Yeah, we are.
It's like coal and it's like slate once again. It's coal and slate again. We're living with the brunt of it, the big silos above us or whatever, which is fine. And so I think we have to be sensitive as well. But I mean, we're getting nothing. We get some pennies. There's another argument for having a Welsh stock exchange. At least then the companies would be limited in Wales and listed in Wales, and we get some cash from that. At the moment, we're getting pretty nothing, and we maybe get sponsorship for a women's football league or something, which is literally what's happening with Butte Energy. So I mean, so saying there's a lot of traction with the flag, which is emotive, but also I think it's quite visual. Flag is visual as well. People understand that. The energy, Crown Estate. Other things which you may be surprised by what people have interacted with, or?
I was blown away by the response I got whenever I spoke about the monarchy and the Prince of Wales. I don't think many people know the history of the title, the Prince of Wales. Certainly far less than, it was something that I knew before I came into this, that's where the title came from. But whenever I've posted about it, the reaction I've had from people across Wales saying, oh my God, I never knew about this. And from America as well. I did a few videos on the Prince of Wales, and the response from Americans who didn't know anything about our history and were particularly interested just really, really threw me on that. And I find the language as well. If I make a lot of videos if there's something particularly relevant that I see in the news that I think, I'm trying to create a video every day if I've got the time. I'll give it a go. And there was one quite recently about someone who didn't pay an English language parking fine. He'd asked for it in Welsh for the story, and he lost his case. But the reaction to that was explosive on TikTok. It really, really resonated. You had a lot of people who were Welsh speakers, a lot of people who were, replying saying, well, I don't speak Welsh, but surely if you're a Welsh speaker living in Wales, you should be spoken to in Welsh in Wales if you need it. And so I find things like that have really resonated as well. For my channel, I did a lot of videos on things such as the cost of living crisis and just current affairs. They did okay. I think I found that I'm more keen to talk about Welsh independence than just what's going on in Westminster, but the two seem to complement each other quite well. And, you know, when people's energy bills were going through the roof, there was a big response. And again, when you talk about the fact that people in Wales, typically our energy bills are higher than those of our English counterparts, because we're paying for extra infrastructure, and that in part that infrastructure is to ship it across the border.
Well, you know, as I keep saying, Westminster is a con. It really is a con.
Oh, completely, completely.
I mean, I was thinking, you know, so energy, stuff to the monarchy language. I mean, do people ask you questions about taxation? Because this is the one which we always get thrown. I tend to think an element of the questions about taxation economy is sort of, I don't support independence. I don't want to come over as being stupid. So I'll say I don't trust the economy thing. And so people, it's sort of a way of saying you don't trust something, but sounding intelligent. And I don't mean that in a nasty way either, because I think people are generally aren't too sure. But I think it's also some kind of a way of maybe getting out a conversation they don't want to have. Are people asking about that at all? Or
so I get a lot of questions about the Welsh deficit and you know how the economy would survive without the union. And there was that paper by Professor Doyle, which showed the day one deficit, and that one, you know, when I talk about that, people find interesting. But it feels like when you stack all the different component parts that get discussed up, you know, like our VAT, where that's about £1 billion that's paid into Westminster, even though I'm putting the petrol in my car in Cwmbran, the VAT goes down to London and it's marked as London because there's no place of purchase on the VAT return. You know, when you talk about all of these different things and you stack them up together, it's fairly clear that what we've got as a deficit on paper isn't the actual deficit, and most people seem to find that. In terms of what the future is for Wales, I don't know the UK's plan or what the UK economy is going to look like in 20 years. I can't tell you who's going to be in government in 2030. I think we probably can agree that we've got 4 more years of Keir Starmer. But after that point, I don't know who's going to be in power. I don't know what decisions the government of the day is going to make on the economy.
So look, are you seriously telling me you don't know the price of a stamp in the independent Wales in the year 2031? I mean, that's
I feel like that's maybe a failing.
How can you campaign for this? You're leading people down a garden path. How much, you know, will a can of Coke cost in independent Wales? I need these facts now, Luke.
That's the thing, but no one needs them for how that's going to look in the UK. And the reality of independence is what that gives is it gives the power to the people of Wales to elect the politicians who govern our country. And I think Wales is in a very challenging position with politics. You know, as a country, we've never delivered a Conservative majority. But if you look at the last 100 years, the Conservatives have been in power more often than not. I think, you know, Wales doesn't, it feels very left-wing because Labour always seem to win, but I don't think that's probably, I don't think everyone's left-wing in Wales and there's no one with opposing views, but I don't think there's a true opposition. And I think Wales has been shafted so hard by Westminster that we struggle to have our own political conversation. There are a lot of people I know who wouldn't vote Conservative because of the way the pits were closed in the 80s, but that's not because they don't, you know, want to see the politicians of the day more in the centre or perhaps, you know, right of centre. It's just that we don't have that debate in Wales. And I think when it comes to planning out the future, one of the most exciting things about Welsh independence is it would give control back to the people of Wales to be able to decide what political future we want. What does our economy look like? What does the whole political landscape look like? And without independence, we're always going to be dragged along behind what England wants anyway. And I don't say that to be anti-English. You know, they're a much larger country. They've got many more people. You know, of the 650 seats, we're down to 32 now. We don't get to decide who governs us.
And I mean, it's with independence, the buck stops with us. So we've had the last 10 years, or whatever, 14 years, the Labour Party in the Senedd saying, oh, it's England, it's Tories' fault for lack of investment in NHS. And there's an element of truth that you can't dispute that. But the Labour Party, this is a system they want. You can't complain about the system when you're literally campaigning against the alternative system, which is independent Wales. This is not the situation in Ireland, where they're now planning to reopen railway lines across the country. In Ireland, where when I was younger, people were literally just making jokes about them on TV, things which would now be seen as racist. And as my mother said, the trope in 1960s was, you had them plant bark that didn't be that it tried. The children in Ireland have nothing on their feet. This is the idea the Welsh people had of Ireland, and now the economy is 4 times bigger than us. In the 1960s, when I was born, we were twice larger than they are. And it's not, and they also, I always get this thing, they're sort of cheating because of the taxation or corporation tax. We think, well, if you're quite a far off island, you've got to do something. You haven't got any oil. I mean, but then, I don't know how I would vote in Ireland. I think I'd want something more radical in a lot of different ways. But I mean, they've done something right, and I think having independence means whatever party you have in power has to deliver for that state, and you're not in a situation where we are in Wales, where people are thinking about Wales, but also thinking what their political career is in London, in Westminster, or how does it upset MPs or Keir Starmer down in Westminster. And it's just basically the whole Labour Party story for the last 100 years is, we'd like it, but we don't want to rock the boat. And my little career ministerial car is more important than devolving HS2 or Crown Estate. And people just want to keep powers for themselves in Westminster. So this is what's screwing Wales. It's the Westminster system, and people still believing that somehow it delivers for us when all the evidence now was against it. I mean, I was in, several times. I was in Slovenia when they declared independence in 1991. You had hyperinflation, where you literally had to put your fingers or the four last digits on the banknote, because 4,000 dinar was worth 4 dinars, and everyone wanted Deutschmarks, the German currency, because hyperinflation is so bad. They had a war. The whole old domestic markets collapsed in the Bosnian and Croatian war. They had to create their own currency and everything, never been independent before, and now their economy's overtaken ours.
Yeah, and that's because they had the ability, and the people who lived there could decide the future that they wanted for their country.
Yeah,
and I think that's where Wales is about to go into such a unique position, I think, in terms of that independence debate, somewhere we haven't been for perhaps ever, because it is becoming a mainstream conversation. I think Labour have done, and you've rightly pointed out, there's some truth in it, but they've got, it's Westminster, it's the Conservatives in Westminster. And now there's a Keir Starmer Labour Party in Westminster. There's only so long, I think, that those excuses will hold. And then I think people will start to see whether or not the Labour Party is delivering. And there's a part of me that obviously really hopes that they do fantastic things, because that's what you want the government to do. But I know that's not what's going to happen over the next, if it's 2 terms.
And their very Britishness of wanting to please Starmer or not hinder the political and personal egos and aspirations of Labour Party MPs from Wales stops them doing stuff. And also I think there's an element of they don't want the Senate to be too good. So I mean, because we didn't get the £4 billion we should have had from HS2, Leigh Waters is looking about the place to do something. So he again brings in a 20 mile an hour to do something, which on the whole I'm supportive of. I think that the Tories have been absolutely disgraceful in talking about a blanket ban where there isn't one. I think there are stupid jobs worth officers in a council or something. Tridar Gaea does not need 20 miles an hour, nor does that big stretch of the Newport Road going through Llanrumney need 20 miles an hour because of dual carriageway.
Completely.
Otherwise, everyone can cite 1 and 2 of these things. Well, deaths have come down, injuries come down, it's saving money. But part of that is because Leigh Waters and the Welsh government didn't have £4 billion to spend on proper things like building railways, improving buses. They had to do something else.
Yeah, and that's
and something which they thought was a small thing. And it isn't. And so they're happy for the Senate to do stuff like that. We'd probably have some kind of big law about dog fouling next. It'd be something like that, or public footpaths or something like that. There's just some kind of virtue signaling. But they can't do the proper stuff because they don't have the money, and they don't have the money because they literally voted against devolving stuff for Wales to have the money.
Yeah, I think that's a really good summary of it. As someone who lives in Cwmbran, works in Cardiff, there are some places where it's 20 miles an hour and it drives me balmy. I'm largely supportive of it in the built-up areas, but the rollout of that was so poorly managed. And the big frustration for me is I should, as someone who lives a 20-minute train ride from Cardiff, be able to just jump on the train, go to Cardiff, come home after work, and it should be easy. But the amount of times that I finished work at 5 o'clock and not got home until 8:30 in the night when I've gone by train because it doesn't work, is such a frustration, especially then when you look at, well, they turned down the money for that. They could
turn down, and they turned down the opportunity. Fair play to Leigh. They offered devolving rail in about 2004, and the Welsh government, or the minister Andrew Davies, turned it down.
Yeah,
because obviously he didn't want to be too Welsh and be too native, or be seen as being nationalistic or gone native, something. So they complain that there's no train stations in Cwmbran or whatever, or Hudson Valley Railway. There should be one, but they've literally voted against it because it's more important for them to own the Nats and not to be seen as Welsh nationalists than it was to actually get resources for their own communities.
Oh, completely. And there is the train stations there in Cwmbran. It's just the trains don't work. They're never there. I think people across Wales, when you look at our public transport, whether it's buses or whether it's train, it doesn't make any sense that we have to travel into England to get to North Wales. That by road, by rail, that's the easiest way to do it. And as someone who, I travel up to Bangor and Ynys quite often, and that drives me up the wall. I think it does with everyone, and saying no to it.
Over here in Aberystwyth, there's no lack of train line to Carmarthen, which, if nothing else, would be a very beautiful train route for tourists.
Yeah, oh, completely.
And Ireland now is looking at getting lines in west of Ireland, which is a very small population and a bigger landmass. But somehow, this is beyond us, and it's mountains. It's always to be. They've never obviously been to Switzerland or anywhere else.
Yeah.
So monarchy, so-called deficit like that, energy, the flag, elements stuff to do with the language. What else? Are there any other subjects, or maybe things you think you expected them to play out better than they have? Maybe been a bit disappointing, or you're just not as good as you thought they would be.
House of Lords. I'm surprised that I don't get more of a reaction on the House of Lords. I feel like I did something wrong when I talk about it, because that is such an expensive waste of money to have an unelected second chamber. Decide
the second biggest unelected chamber after the Communist Party, Communist Plenum in China. So, are there any particular subjects that you thought maybe would get more traction, but not as much as you maybe expected?
Yeah, there've been a couple. The House of Lords is one that blows my mind because it's such an expensive, unelected, undemocratic. That second chamber makes no sense to me. And whenever I've posted videos on that, they haven't done anywhere near as well as I would have expected, which surprises me because it seems like such a waste of taxpayer money.
So why do you think that is then? Because I mean, it's something which people aren't enamored with. It is an absolutely crazy situation, and it's also something which, even if you're not interested in Wales at all, which has, you can imagine that would have some traction with you. But
I think sometimes, and I go back often and watch the videos I make, I think it might just be the way that I've worded it. Sometimes the messaging doesn't grab someone. With videos, you've sort of got the way people scroll through on TikTok. You've got probably 3 seconds to make an impression. It's very, very quick, the way people will just flick the video away. They might not like your face and you're gone. So I think, it's what I'm trying to do with all of these videos where I've made something on a topic and it's not quite landed is look at the messaging and see how I can rework those things. There are so many good arguments for Welsh independence. There are so many good arguments to be made against Westminster. I might try it 5 or 6 times and then I'll give up. But I think all of those things, it's a story to be told, and it does resonate with people when you think of, these people who are paid hundreds of pounds a day to make decisions for us who haven't been democratically elected. There's got to be an angle with that story. It's just maybe I haven't found it yet. The Blue Books is another one that I thought would do incredibly well, and it didn't.
Because I mean, the quotes in that are absolutely astounding. I mean, you couldn't make it. I literally read it with my mouth agog, and I'd known about the Blue Books as a young man, but when I actually read the quotes is absolutely, it is colonial in attitude, isn't it?
Oh,
things are saying about Welsh people and Welsh culture and language in general.
it completely is. It's exactly that. And there was a video I did about whether or not Wales was a colony, and that referenced the blue books in there, and that got a lot of traction because it is colonial dictat. It is.
It's literally
you can't deny what was written in there. It's awful.
But
I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done around the messaging around independence, and that's a lot of trial and error for me. I'll post a video and get 1,000 views, and then I'll post another one, and I've had ones that have had over 1 million views on a single video. I've had ones that have had there was a fantastic tweet by a guy who's part of the Scottish independence movement, where he did what if the UK was a house share, and I've recently reposted that one on my TikTok, and I don't think it's up on my Twitter, actually. I should probably put it there. But the first time I posted that, it got 650,000 views. So there's ways that you can frame an argument, I think. And I'm hoping that, whether it's the Lords or whether I'm talking about Tryweryn or Aberfan or any of those things, if you can get that opening gambit and that opening bit of messaging right, I think, a lot more people will come on board, and hopefully once the doors opened and they see that, then they'll start watching more of the things that I talk about and start looking at YesCymru and all the other messaging, because all the information's out there. It's just getting
it is
the attention.
I mean, I was thinking, we're recording this on England Day, so the 16th of September. Then in the 18th of September is the anniversary of the devolution vote in 1997. Scottish referendum, independence was held 10 years ago, more or less to the day. I'm just thinking, I mean, the world has changed a lot in the last 10 years, even from Scottish independence, not to talk of the devolution in 1997, certainly since Glendower's Day. But I mean, looking at the situation in Scotland now, I mean, about 4 or 5 years ago, people just expected, I did, that referendum vote to be I thought it'd be around 2025. And I also thought maybe it could be 18 years after the referendum 2014. So this little theory I have is that things come in about a wave of 18 years, which gives enough people, especially with big events. So something happens, it settles down, there's end reaction. So I mean, is there something you think we can learn from maybe what's happened? I mean, I think maybe with the Scottish referendum, maybe just after people are quite tired, maybe they just don't want the referendum straight again. Sturgeon bottled it. I don't know, maybe there needs to be some kind of natural healing or getting over it before starting again. But are there things you think we could learn from the mistakes they did? I don't think they made many mistakes, but it's something maybe we can learn from what happened there.
I think it's clear that there will be a Welsh independence referendum, and I think it is common sense to suggest that Westminster will call that referendum at a time where support is larger than it is today, but where they're confident that they can win it. And I think the Welsh independence movement needs to know that they are going to, as they did with Scotland, throw everything at it. In the 11th hour, whether it was claims that they'd, lose the currency overnight or any of those things, it was just throw enough things to make enough people doubt it. I think with the Welsh independence movement, if you look at that growth that we've had over the last 10, 15 years, where support has gone from 5 to 10% and then has nudged up, and now, we're if you pay attention to the polls, around the 30s as an average, sometimes above, sometimes below. It's inevitable that we will have that referendum. And, as a movement, what we really need to think about is what can we do now to get the messaging into people's hearts and minds, and to make sure that they understand, all of these really good arguments for why we should be an independent country. Hundreds of countries manage it without England governing them. There's around 200 independent nations.
They're doing okay.
And they're all fine. No one's queuing up to say, hello, could England run me? But we've got to think about how we can get that messaging across to people in a way where they will resonate with it and understand it. And, that's part of what I've tried to do with my TikTok. I'm just a middle-aged bloke in my living room ranting into my phone about things that annoy me, and I get that, but you know, there's so much of an opportunity, I think, certainly through whether it's social media, whether it's banners on bridges or banners on beaches, you know, any of these things. It's just about how can we get people to start having the conversation, and we need to do that before Westminster shuts it down, because they will.
Yeah,
they will absolutely shut it down.
Yeah, we're building the movement now. We're still building movement, and it has to be done. And sometimes it's things I think outside of our control will happen, which would give us a big boost or maybe knock us down. But we have to keep making the arguments. I'm just thinking the important thing for us is also to have more Luke Johns about the place. You know, it contributing to the independence ecosystem. Not always agreeing, of course. You know, even sometimes being critical voices and coming from different perspectives. I mean, how many other Luke Johns or for independence discussing, supporting people would you say that are on something like TikTok?
There are three of us that really stand out. So there's myself, Bethany, and Leigh. We make a lot of Welsh independence content. And when I first started, Bethany and Leigh were two of the people that really helped drive the messaging that I wanted to do just by watching the videos that they'd made. Both of those are fantastic content creators. Bethany is very, very committed to Welsh history. That's what she studied. And she makes a lot of independence content around that. And Leigh is from a legal background and does some fantastic videos. There are a lot of other people who make videos. I think probably not as, they haven't made as many as us as yet, but that movement is growing. And I think it's about empowering people and making that information easy to obtain. With me, the biggest time soak for creating TikTok videos is the time that it takes to just find what are the arguments, where can I get it? What's this thing? Where can I get it? What's this thing? Where can I get it? And I think, you know, as this information, and YesCymru do a very good job of it, you see a lot of really, really strong imagery that just, you know, you'll get one image that just lays out some of the facts. I think the more of that we do, the more people will understand the message and then share that with other people. It's about simplifying complicated arguments and getting people to resonate with them.
I mean, do you think there are messages or things which YesCymru, as this is the Radio YesCymru podcast, that YesCymru could be working on, improving, or maybe shifting their attention to?
I would like to see a lot more video from YesCymru. I think that's a medium that, you know, it's being used an awful lot more. 35% of people in Wales use TikTok. 35%, and the average person spends 4 hours a day on their mobile phone. I think that sometimes, and we all do it, I've done it, sometimes you can overthink what you're trying to say and spend too much time worrying about the messaging. I've said things that are wrong before and I've deleted it and gone, oh, that was you know, I'd misread that. But generally, you know, if you act in good faith and you get the messaging out there, then people will pay attention to it. I think it's important to be bold. I think YesCymru does a lot of very, very good messaging. I really do. I'm a big supporter of YesCymru's work, but I think there's a way of being particularly bold with your messaging and very in your face. And if you look at politics anywhere around the world, whether you look at Brexit, and that's a whole separate conversation that you know, you can have, but if you look at the way that the messaging worked around that, social media is very good at putting a message across. And I think YesCymru can be, it's a force for good. Without YesCymru, I probably would have missed most of the messages that I make videos on. But I think you can definitely, whether it's Instagram Reels, whether it's TikTok, whether it's the Facebook has the scrolly videos or YouTube Shorts, I think that's a really strong opportunity. And you're only asking someone for 1 minute of their time. That's it. You know, if we were politicians a while ago, you know, you'd knock door after door after door after door just to get someone to answer so that you could have a couple of minutes chatting to them. You're on their phone. They've got a screen in front of them waiting for someone to pop up and go, hello. And I think if you think about it from that perspective, some people will hate it. Some people won't watch it. But you might just hit the right person who goes, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, it worked with you, Luke.
It did.
And I mean, sometimes I think the Welsh national movement, I think it's quite sensitive to people saying, oh, it's just mindless nationalism. And sometimes I think we maybe overcompensate writing too much stuff, but then also you need this kind of detailed stuff as well. So I think there's nothing wrong with being popular and populist, I think. And by being populist doesn't necessarily mean you're being nasty to other people.
Completely.
I was thinking, if someone is watching this and they fancy doing some videos themselves and jumping in on the sort of independence train on social media, I mean, would you give them advice, or could they get in touch with you or something for a chat?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm on all the social media platforms, and there's a link in my bio, which is, I post my email address there, and there's links so you can find me on all the platforms. And I'm always happy to discuss things through that medium. I think the advice that I would give would be jump in. When I started doing it, I wasn't expecting anyone to watch me. I thought it would be, me posting something and maybe get 50 likes at best, because I was doing it as a labor of love for myself. It was something I was passionate about, and I was finding out new things every day, and I just jumped into it. My first video was on the Mary Lloyd, and that had just over 2,000 views, and I was like, oh, 2,000 people watched that. That's
I organised the Aberystwyth Mary Lloyd, so that's interesting. I have to check that out then.
And then I did the second. Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, no. So I mean, if someone does start off, I mean, as you say, they're not going to get loads of views in any case. I mean, even the first few videos are a bit ropey. In some respect, it doesn't make much difference because not that many people can see you. So it's taking you a while to get to know your own voice, your own kind of style, and maybe what works in any case. There's nothing to, and you can always delete it if you're not happy with something.
Completely.
That's always an option.
Completely.
What's the next idea then, Luke? Assuming there isn't going to be another sort of social media platform, but I mean, are you looking to continue doing this work or develop in other fields, or any other ideas?
I think I'm going to continue with TikTok. I really enjoy being a voice on TikTok, and I think it's a growing platform. Before I started on there, I think much like most people, I thought it was something for my son and people dancing. And then when I've looked on the 50% of TikTok's users are age 25 to 45 in the UK, which again really surprised me. I'm keen to keep sharing things on X or Twitter. That really surprised me. I've had my the account since 2021, but when I started posting the videos, the reaction to that really surprised me. So I think it's just about continuing with what I've been doing. I enjoy it. I enjoy making videos. I've got a lot of ideas for things that I want to make. I've got a bit of a calendar together. So next month, you've got the anniversary of Aberfan and Schwerin, and you've got all of these big important events that, I think should be part of the national conversation, and does that. So I've not really thought much further ahead than just keeping ploughing away and hoping that people continue to
I was just thinking, if is there any sort of subject you'd like to know more about, or maybe I'm just thinking if someone has written some papers on finance or something, or the viability of the economy, or I don't know, something like that. I mean, they could get in touch with you and you could digest it down to bite-sized chunks or something. Or is there something you'd like to do a little video on, but you're not too sure if you're confident enough in that subject to do? Maybe someone can jump in here and help out.
The one that really got me was Owen Glyndŵr, because I was going to do the video and I ended up being away this weekend, but I scheduled some time to do some proper research into the history there, because it's someone that I know a little bit about, but how to take that message and distill it, that really surprised me. I think one thing that some of my friends and family will do is if they just see something interesting, whether it's an article or a paper, they'll just send it to me, and sometimes I'll go, oh, I don't quite know how I'll be able to get that message across, and leave it. But other times again, that tweet that I talked about, if the UK was a house share, someone shared that with me. And I was like, that's fantastic. The guy with the parking fine, one of my work colleagues, sent that to me and was like, oh, this is really interesting. And that really blew up. So I'm always looking for ideas for new things that I can post.
Good. Well, maybe people can get in touch with you. With Bethany and Leigh's handles, do you remember offhand, or we can put them in the link in any case?
Oh, I can't remember offhand. I can grab them for you, but if we can put them in the link, I think.
Because I mean, it'd be nice to grow the independence ecosystem, support each other, work off each other. Sometimes disagree, of course, because that's how things are. Luke Johns, I think you're doing an absolutely fantastic and invaluable contribution to the discussion about Welsh independence, moving it forward, leaps and bounds, reaching people, you know, lots of people like myself can't reach, with interesting content, intelligent, democratic, and just fun as well. I mean, and it's so well put together, and you're doing it basically for free, which is absolutely crazy. You know, you should be awarded the medal for services to Cymru medal or something like that. But
you're too kind.
yeah, no, but generally, it's been a pleasure to speak to you. I'm so glad that you have come over to Twitter so I can find you. But the important thing is you're reaching people in lots of different demographics and also in different parts of Wales, which is the important thing. We're now building the movement year by year. It's getting stronger and stronger, getting deeper and deeper. You know, when we started about 10 years ago, and it grew quite quickly, and I felt it was a bit like strawberries. They're very beautiful, but the roots are very shallow. And I think every year that passes now, the roots are getting deeper, and we're growing something very important and steadfast as well for the future. Luke Johns, until the next time, keep tweeting, keep TikToking and Instagramming and putting stuff on Facebook. Keep creating a fantastic content because it's very much appreciated. Diolch i ti.
Oh, diolch. Thank you.
Croeso.